All right, what's up, Dragon Brood? There are a lot, and I mean a lot of myths around Magic the Gathering Arena. Some believe that, well, Autotapper's out to get you at key points, or that for some reason Wizards has it set up where you can't win more than a handful of games in a row, or a ton of other things. So I wanted to do a video where we actually get to put these myths to rest. And how are we going to do that? Well, I went straight to the source. I have Ian Adams here from the Magic Arena team to answer these questions and more, and give us a glimpse into the future. And these questions were sourced from the community, so this is y'all's chance to get all your curiosities answered and know what's going on under the hood with Magic Arena. And we got to have a very candid interview where he freely answered all these questions and gave us a little more insight on some things that might actually surprise you. Well, all right, Ian, why don't you tell us who you are, what you do for Arena and Wizards, and why you are qualified to answer these crazy questions from the community. Oh, one last thing before we hear from Ian. We did have a technical issue trying to set up all the video audio stuff. So I just have Ian's audio. We'll use a picture of Ian on screen. And this is actually his voice. We recorded it through Discord. It's not an AI or anything like that. Just save your comments. Enjoy this. There's a lot of good information.
I'm Ian Adams. I am the product owner of Cardset on Arena. In non-business jargon terms, I'm in charge of the part where you play Magic.
Just in charge of the part where we play Magic. That makes you definitely qualified.
Yeah, it's a pretty big part of the game. There's deck building and stuff. You know, there's a lot of other people, but I'm pretty proud of the part where you play Magic.
Well, this is good because we do have several questions in that space. And let's start with one of the more, I guess we'll call it contentious sections of questioning here. But players have said that they believe you can only win so many games in a row because Arena puts a block on you because, I don't know, maybe they just don't want you to win a lot in a row. So is that true? And if not, why would Wizards even remotely want something like that to exist?
No, we don't do that. I mean, there is the closest things. A lot of these have like a tiny echo of a real thing that's happening. There's matchmaking, and you've got a matchmaking rank. You've got an MMR. I'm like, that's not a secret. It's true. And if you go on a crazy tear, winning a ton of matches, over time, your band of who we think is a good match for you is going to go up. You're going to start competing against other people who are more successful and have more successful matches. That's not, dissimilar from how like chess ranking works or anything like that. But there is no like cap where we go like 5 games, crank it. There's not like a crazy curve to it or anything. It's a pretty standard matchmaking formula. The higher rank the person you matched against when you beat them, the better your rank, all that kind of stuff.
Well, that makes perfect sense. I mean, whatever game you play, they already have MMR rankings, and makes sense that Arena works the same way. Now, another interesting question, because I am a creator, a streamer, for Arena, there is a belief that we get better results on our accounts because, well, I guess Arena has special triggers for streamers, so we get better results than the average person and we get mana screwed less. Is there any truth to that?
This is another one that I've heard. I guess my first thought when I hear stuff like this is like, who sets that up? Like, how big a streamer do you have to be before, like, do you get, I don't know. Because there's people out there streaming to like one person. Are they getting an advantage? Can you just turn on OBS and immediately Arena? So the answer is no. We aren't fudging anything behind the screens. Honestly, when I hear that, my immediate thought is like, that sounds hard. This is a zero-sum game. So to give you better RNG, to fix flooding, to that kind of thing, that would mean giving someone else worse games.
Oh, fair.
Like, you can't give one person an advantage without giving their one-on-one opponent a disadvantage. And like, I've watched enough streams. Streamers play against streamers, so who are we giving the advantage to?
Yeah.
If that was happening, like, it doesn't even. This is another one of these ones that like, it doesn't really make sense and would be like a really complicated thing. And I'm not clear what the benefit to me would be. Like, what?
I'm with you there, right? That's largely been my argument is what would be the benefit to Wizards? right? Like, even if this was a thing, like if we built a bunch of junk decks and won a bunch, and then every person went and played it, if anything, that destroys our reputation as creators.
Right.
That doesn't help Wizards at all. But I guess in that same vein, there's also a belief that we have all the cards available because we're creators or whatever, but they don't believe we'd spend our own money for these. So, is there any world where Wizards has creators that they're just giving free accounts to with infinite gold and cards?
Not to streamers. There are. This is another one. I think there's a tiny little hint before events. Sometimes we will give people who are commentating the event temporary use of a loaded account so that they are up to speed and familiar with standard and they've seen those matches and that kind of thing, that they know what all of that stuff looks like. That is not the same as free unlimited access on their accounts. There's also like plenty of streamers you can see buying drafts and opening their packs and stuff, so, and like completing collections. So you can watch that one not be true.
Yeah, I've done some of my own where I've let people, like a new set comes out, hey, you can watch me open some packs and go through stuff. And I legitimately have spent my own money in my own PayPal account to get those. But, maybe I wasn't big enough according to them. So, I'm glad to hear that's also put to rest.
Yes.
But let's go into another category of questions here because we do have some of our favorite things when we get to be upset at Arena when we're talking about Autotapper and the Shuffler. So let's start with, just to help people understand Autotapper. Autotapper's not out to get them to make them lose games, but what is the, I guess, kind of order of operations that Autotapper looks for when tapping your mana or using your resources so players can maybe learn from this and understand how it works?
So one of the most important things to understand with Autotap is that it doesn't understand what happens after your turn. So a really easy one is if you are playing a creature that has an activated ability that's like off, it costs you and it's got an activated ability that costs blue. Autotapper might tap both of your blue sources to play that creature because Autotap does not understand future available actions that will be available as a result of your actions. It can do some really basic stuff, like it can look at cards in hand and predict there. There are just some really hard caps on looking into the future because game states in Magic are potentially very, very complicated, and it sure there's like 99% of games it's safe to go, yeah, after you play this you'll need blue to be able to activate that ability. And it's like, yeah, except in this game there's like a copy effect happening, and actually when you play this these are all going to get turned into copies of a different creature because who knows what else is happening, and you're going to have 30 of them, and it's also going to make treasure, so who cares what mana you're spending. Like, the ability for stuff to get out of control is just too significant for us to look into the future.
Yeah, I want to say another thing I've noticed about Autotapper is when I'm playing, if I have, say, like treasure or I have lands that may deal damage to me, I feel like I automatically know, okay, I need to manually tap these because Autotapper is going to say, I don't want to use extra resources or I don't want to deal damage to you.
It Autotap, whenever possible, will try to use what it sees as a renewable resource. So if you've got a land, if you've got a creature that you can tap, even if you were thinking, no, obviously I'm going to attack with this creature, I'm not going to use it as a mana dork this turn. Autotap has no way of knowing that. And to Autotap, using up your treasure forever is the bigger risk than tapping that creature. There's plenty of gameplay times where that's not true. This is one of those things where you kind of have to be like, hey, we think about 70% of the time you'd rather tap your mana dork than use up your treasure. So that's the way we're going to split the difference there. And the best thing we can do is show you a highlight before you cast and say, heads up, this is Autotap's plan. If you don't like it, please step in and make your own calls.
And I'm guilty. I know that I have literally drugged the card, saw what was highlighted, and as I'm clicking, going, "Oh no!" So that's on me. That is not on Autotapper.
For the longest time playing Historic Elves, it would want to tap Elvish Archdruid early.
Oh,
Like, no, you want to wait till the very end because the longer you wait, the more elves you have down, the more he's going to tap for. Uh, and we have adjusted that one, but that was one where like I work here and I would catch myself all the time being like, no, I was going to be able to cast Coco this turn.
but see what that proves is Autotapper's not out to get us. It gets everybody equally.
It cuts us all down.
All right, so let's talk about the, I guess, shuffler and different aspects of it, because everybody knows about the hand smoothing and best of one in your opening draw, but does that affect anything after your opening hand?
It does not. It looks at opening hands, and this is a fun opportunity to correct a thing. It is more likely to select an opening hand that matches the makeup of your deck. It's not guaranteed. It leans that way, but the odds, the possibility that you just get a bum hand is still there. We capture that from tabletop. It's not gone. We just in a best of one world, games where you have a 2-lander and you never draw that third land and then you're dead on turn 6 are not very fun. And trying to compensate for that a little and make more real games happen has been a lot more compelling. It's also worth noting, I've seen some people think Autotap, that's always going to try and put 3 lands in. No, it's going to look at the composition of your deck, and if you've got 17 lands in a 60-card deck, it's going to appropriately be like, okay, there shouldn't be very many lands in an opening hand, and it will try to bias against getting a lot of lands. But again, it's still possible you'll get a 3-lander because it's not deterministic.
Yeah, it's random still. Yeah.
Yeah, it's putting its finger on the scale a little bit one way or another, but it's not always happening the way it is. We're still shuffling. We look at a couple of real hands, and we give you one more often that matches the makeup of your deck.
Okay, on my next question, I have to say that I am guilty of causing some of these problems, but I kind of had a meme on my channel where I make a lot of decks with 61 cards. And some people think I'm putting it in there to manipulate the arena shuffler, but it really honestly just creates engagement and has people asking questions. But I do have to ask, does adding that 61st or 62nd card, I don't know, somehow manipulate the shuffler to get you better draws?
None that I'm not a mathematician. Maybe there's some line where you're like, no, if I can make it exactly 7/16 of the deck is lands, but I don't see that happening. As far as I know, it just does the same math. It divides the size of the deck by the number of lands by the size of the deck and gets a ratio.
Now, I will tell you, in all fairness, even when I was playing competitively in paper, there were several times I registered 61 cards and there's no difference. So
the regularity with which in playtests, when working with like Hall of Fame Magic players, they just go 41 this time.
yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter.
It's fine.
So here's a serious question though behind the scenes that I wouldn't even remotely know the answer to. But does the arena team over time adjust or change the shuffler math? Because, in every game, there's some algorithm behind the scenes that helps determine your shuffler. Is that something that y'all update regularly?
The shuffler's been the same since closed beta. I will say, if anybody, there have been times where people have done research. All the research that I've seen in the last many, many years has said, this is a fair shuffler. It's doing what they say it's doing. If anybody were to find a flaw in that, and there's millions and millions and millions of matches worth of data to dig through, if you go to any of the many websites that collect match data from arena players, and you can find an error, I would love to know about it because we would want to fix it. We'd want to make an update if somebody identified something. But the reality is that every time we see somebody dig through that data, they come back and say, no, it looks right.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think where that originates from is some players who may experience a level of success for a season or two and then don't kind of look and go, oh, well, they must have done something to the shuffler. My draws have been so much worse this month. And, but guys, here it is. He's telling you it's been the same since the beginning.
And I mean, lucks of weird runs of weird luck are real. Like that happens. But that's just like life. Sometimes you flip the heads 6 times in a row. Like it happens.
Well, they say it's sometimes you're the windshield, sometimes you're the bug.
Well, and there's lots of stuff. I will see reports from players where they'll come in and say, hey, I had this run of starting second or of bad hands or whatever, and I ran statistical analysis, and I'm a 1 in a million experience. And it's like, okay, but that means you were the one. We have enough people playing this game. The 1 in a million thing is happening.
But also, they're not reporting the other 99 times where it was normal.
Right. Or when you get that run where the shuffle's going your way every time, nobody ever seems to report in like, hey, I think the shuffler's broken. I'm getting a perfect curve every game, 15 games in a row.
Oh, I've definitely done videos where I have gone 15-1 or something and told people in the video, like, guys, I got a bit lucky here. Like, understand that this is not normal, All right, so let's kind of shift gears a little bit here, and let's talk about just kind of general UI stuff on Arena, because there's a few things both in mobile and PC that people had questions about. And one is, why doesn't Arena have a built-in way to input codes on mobile?
That is a store policy thing that someone else's lawyers made calls about. So we have the option to do it from the mobile website. You can go to the accounts, myaccounts.magic.com or .wizards.com, I think it is, and enter the codes there. But in terms of doing it in apps, people who went to a lot more college than me talked to other people who went to more college than me and decided that was how it had to be.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because that was one of my assumptions on that, was that, I've seen stuff with a million other games having issues with the App Store on Apple or whatever, and there's percentages that have to go to different places and certain things that have to be checked. So it makes a lot of sense that Arena just said, hey, we already have a website, go put it in over here. Makes it easy. Here's another one. How long does it take the Arena team to respond to an issue that were to pop up with something on the interface or a card if there's a lot of reports being submitted to the system?
It depends a little bit on the impact, but actually, one of my goals that I was in charge of last year for the team was speeding up the rate at which we can get out fixes for rule bugs. And I'm really happy to say that at this point it's within 48, usually 24 hours of us knowing about a bug. As long as there's a clear fix for it, we can get the fix out really, really quickly. If it's a client-side fix and it needs to go through cert, which means, sending builds to Apple and waiting for them to approve, and that whole process, that obviously slows us down somewhat. But anything we can fix fully on the rule engine side, we can get fixes out really, really quickly now.
That's actually pretty nice to know, actually. So if something's not fixed, it means y'all are working on it and there's just other issues at hand.
Yes. And I know there are times in the past, there's stuff that kills me. I remember Ninja's Kunai. It haunts me to this day. There's a reason we fixed that process.
Next question is, why is there not an easy report player button on Arena? Because I feel like, because we have to click it, you have to go to the same page, you submit bugs and all that. And there's sometimes just like, this person has, big blank energy as their name. I'd like to just report that and keep playing,
That's a good call. I believe the intent back in the day, and this is one of those calls that was made long enough ago that I wasn't here for the decision making. And I've been here over 6 years, so that gives you a sense of how long ago this decision got made. It was basically that when it's right on the surface, the number of times that you get nuisance reports where somebody's just like, this guy's playing a mean deck, and that's my report. It's all counter spells and removal. And that pulls away from people dealing with, like, there's people out there with really who have found ways around the text filters and put in some really horrible stuff in their names, or are engaged in really wildly inappropriate behavior.
The people that want to go all the way down to just before using their rope for every action.
Yes. Now, thank God, that one's we can find in the data. We run reports every month and find the people who are roping too much. And the people who rope constantly, they get warnings and suspensions and bans.
Oh, awesome. I did not know that was a thing. So that's probably news for a lot of the players. So yeah, definitely report those folks. They are doing something about them.
We are. We read those reports, and I know it's frustrating. Part of the reason it's a little bit of a dig is to make sure that we actually can read all of them, that we're reporting real stuff that matters, and not, this guy used the Sleepy Hedron emote too many times.
Okay, here's another interesting one. And I think this came up from viewers because they realized that you were able to put in duplicate names or hidden names for the stuff from Spider-Man and the Omenpaths. So you can search with the Spider-Man name and get the Omenpaths card to pop up. But why, when we're searching for cards or rules text, do, say, like the number 2 and the written out TWO not work the same way?
So the reason we were able to do it with stuff like the Omenpaths is that we made specific one-to-one substitutions where the code on that end knows that if you're searching for this specific SPM card, that you mean, the thing that we have on Arena that is the equivalent of that is this. With numbers and numerals, unfortunately, having that dynamically in there, it's not an unsolvable problem. It just is one that has more complexity than you would expect. And the folks who work on that side of things, have just not had time to dedicate to it. It's a good example because you've got to do like dynamic wildcard stuff, capturing in the middle of the text string, and that increases the depth and complexity and cost of every search that you do, which doesn't seem expensive until you're doing millions of them. And again, not impossible to fix, but video games are a world where everything is an or. It's never and. It's not can we do that. It's always do that instead. And so to get that in would have meant not doing some other thing that team did.
Okay. That's a really good answer that I think a lot of people wouldn't have considered. So let's move to some mechanics into Arena specifically, because we had a couple of questions about Alchemy that I thought were very interesting. But is Alchemy a secret way for Wizards to test abilities for potentially other game projects?
I mean, I don't think there's a designer in the world who doesn't constantly think, "Ooh, can I do this over here?" Like, it's no secret that we look at Duel Masters, which is another card game that we make exclusively for Japan, and we watch mechanics they're building. They bring stuff over that we did. Every designer I know, when they get the chance, they're trying stuff out and they're stealing a thing from that game over there, and they're rebuilding it to make sense in this context. There have definitely been times where people had a card idea that at the time you couldn't do in paper or in tabletop, and they tried it out in Alchemy, and then there was discussion about, well, can we make that work?
So is it fair to say that R&D kind of comes to the Arena team and talks about different things that they would like to try or test, or just weird ideas they have, and then you get to try them in Alchemy?
We've definitely been able to do that. It's not like a standard every single Alchemy set. 5 cards come from R&D testing these specific mechanics or whatever. But there are things in there that, like there were some mystery booster cards that were like a pet card of Aaron Forsyth that got an Alchemy version with tweaked numbers.
That's cool. So hey, let's try to get this in. I like this card and I can't make it in paper. Can you make it happen on Arena?
Exactly.
All right. Okay, so here's some general, I guess, work process questions on Arena that also came up, but we're kind of talking about a lot that you work on and that the team works on. So how far ahead do y'all get to work on sets? Because we know that for the paper side, some of that stuff starts getting developed 2 years in advance. So what's y'all's run time between the time you get to work on a file to the time we see it?
That's a great question. So we're often doing lots of different parts of things. So we're pretty much wrapped on chart TMT, which is the next set that's coming out. We're still playtesting and QA's running on it, so that if we find anything, we'll go back and fix it. We're nearly done on Secrets of Strixhaven right now. There's some work being done on sets for the rest of the year. With Universes Beyond being in there, that kind of shifts a lot of the schedules too, because you need to get things through the approval process with the licensor. So sets that we usually wouldn't be working on that are further out, we'll work on much earlier than we would have in the past in order to get the effects in so that we can show them off to our partner and they can approve or give feedback. In terms of just looking over sets, I had a meeting today talking about mechanics and some early card designs for a set that will come out in 2028. I've been in early meetings for sets as far out as like 2030. We are quite far out there. We're on different phases with each of these.
So y'all must have several teams working on sets at a time with that much going on.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff happening in parallel where there might be like engineers are currently working on this part of it, but designers are looking ahead and reading cards and, building out what the UI will look like and deciding which cards need to get a count badge to show relevant numbers or whatever.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. How difficult was it, speaking about Universe Beyond and licenses, how difficult was it with the whole thing going on with Spider-Man to get the Spider-Man cards, or the Omenpath cards, I guess, on Arena with the Spider-Man, different art, but the same text and all that going on?
It definitely presented some unique challenges. We knew about it far enough in advance that we were able to plan ahead. There wasn't like a month away from release and suddenly we went pull all the Spider-Man stuff out and switch over. It was something we were aware was part of the plan, and so we had some time. We were able to commission all that new artwork for it.
That's also good to know too, because I think there was a belief that, I guess, somehow they didn't know or early enough in the process, and there was some type of scramble to make it happen. But good to know this is something that y'all had an eye on, from the get go. With that being said, there's a lot of times people say, well, why can't they fix this? Or why doesn't this get updated? And we know a lot of cards are coming out for Magic right now. And obviously y'all have to get those onto Arena. So I guess in a percentage, how is your time or the team's time allocated toward client optimization versus new stuff going into the client?
That waxes and wanes a little bit. Sometimes we're really, really focused on getting the new thing out. The release of like Modern Horizons 3 last year was a period where it was just like, it was a part of a busy year. We were into a busy summer, and that set was extremely high complexity and needed a lot of support. Some other sets, Foundations was a huge set, but overall the complexity was a lot lower, and that was a time where we had the opportunity to work on some tech debt and improve stability where we could. And we try in the average sprint to spend between 10 and 15% of our time just fixing little bugs or cleaning things up or improving performance, that kind of thing.
Okay, well, that'll make people happy to know that it's always a thing because I think there was an understanding, or at least a assumption that, well, we're putting out so many cards and there's this much demand, they're never spending time, on quality of life stuff or whatever. But you're always making time for that, it sounds like, which is good.
Yeah, you've got to for anything that you want to have live as long as we want Arena to live. If you're not cleaning up after yourself and resolving tech debt and taking care of those things, it just spirals out of control.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So let's take a chance here to talk about some future stuff, if you can talk about some of the stuff. But how far away would you say we are from having every Magic card on Arena?
Every Magic card. So when you say every Magic card,
let's say every
you're
tournament
counting...
legal Magic card on Arena.
Okay, fair enough, because I start to get into like Chaos Orb is a Magic card. I still think we're a good ways out. The two categories that are the furthest out in my mind are cards that are, it's even a very simple card takes a person's time. An artist has to import the art, they need to check the crop and make sure that aspect ratios were maintained correctly. The older a piece of art is, the more likely that there is manual work required for it. Your art a lot of the time is able to have like metadata associated with it that says like, hey, the artist delivered it in this shape, but we know it needs to be this other shape to fit into a card correctly. Older art, you just have like a really high quality scan of the painting that they made, and you have to figure it out. So that takes time. QA has to test things, even basic stuff. You have to make sure cards that don't have localizations in all the languages that we're localized to are all working. And because there's that baseline amount of work that has to go into every card, even a really simple card that from a rules perspective works almost immediately, it makes some of the old, really bad cards pretty unattractive to spend time on. The kind of thing that you look at and you're like, no one is ever, ever going to play a 2/2 for 4. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, I guess that's something else to consider too, that I don't think comes up is there are a lot of cards that just won't get played, but technically have to be added if you're going to have a complete system.
Yeah. And then the other big outliers are there's a handful of cards, and these aren't like won't do's. They're just the kind of thing that we look at and go, that is just so much extra work. Like a Karn Liberated is one where, I mean, I think most people don't think as deeply about the rules. Karn Liberated violates all these core assumptions that systems all through Arena make. Systems all through Arena assume, for example, that games end, which is not the case with Karn Liberated. They assume that a best of 3 match has 3 matches in it, not one kind of, and then whatever happens afterward. The games do not assume that you'll start a game with a deck with fewer than 60 cards in it, which Karn Liberated obviously wants to do. It wants to pull cards out, have them in exile, and then put them in. Games assume at a really fundamental level that you're not going to start the game with an ability all from a previous game on the stack mid-resolution.
Yeah, that's a lot. I hadn't even thought about what that card does to you guys, and I'm sure there's a bunch of others that kind of fall in that space too.
So there's a decent number that are cool cards, and that people probably would play if we implemented them. They just are a huge time sink, and that doesn't mean never, but it does mean not all at once. It's gonna, each of those is gonna take its own big chunk of time and need to fit into the schedule.
Yeah, that's interesting perspective. Like I said, I've never even thought about how one card, and again, there's probably multiples, but even how one card can cause that much extra programming around it.
Oh yeah, the most recent one that's in there that I would imagine most players didn't even think about is Dao Chan got reprinted with Avatar. Dao Chan's the first card in Arena where an ability that you control has targeting done by your opponent. And the number of weird, complicated things to make sure that it's your ability on the stack, but it's not burning your rope while your opponent is making a targeting choice. All that kind of stuff was like a really, really significant amount of work.
Well, there you go. Like there's a lot to consider. I think it's taken for granted that you just put a card in and it just works. But like you're saying, there's stuff like that that doesn't work like anything else currently on the client, and you have to build new pieces for that. There's also been some minor questions and complaints, I guess, about how players are playing a bunch of different constructed formats, but are all in the same constructed ladder. Like, are there any plans for changing the ranking system in the future?
I will admit to that being a little bit outside my purview. I can say that is a piece of feedback that we've definitely heard. And I think beyond that, I'll tell you, maybe you should talk to David Finsuff sometime to see if he's got a better answer. We can round him up. Yeah, I can definitely say like we're aware that that's feedback that people have, and you know when Arena launched, we had standard. We had standard and we had quick draft and sealed.
This is where I get to tell everybody, if you want those questions answered or want a part 2, go ahead and do all the things that make the dings and let me know in a comment.
And yeah, obviously there are a lot more formats on Arena now, and there are people out there who are playing, best of 1 historic casually and best of 3 timeless very seriously, and Brawl, once a month. And that's a very different world than it was when we said you've got a constructed rank and a limited rank.
Yeah, I'd imagine there's also just way more players playing now than there were when it first launched, which also affects things. So I have to ask, because Commander is obviously the biggest paper format for Magic, and there's been rumblings, and y'all had mentioned something about working on Commander at some point. So are we still working toward Commander coming to Arena? And if you can tell us, how far into the future are we looking for this to be a reality?
We are still looking at. I use the phrase 4 player because I feel like when I say Commander, people hear like, oh, so we're gonna get every card from Commander, and I'm like, slow down, just give me a second. But 4 player is still in the works. There are probably at this point more design and presentation hurdles that are really big than there are technical ones.
A lot of stuff on a board state, for sure.
It's a lot of stuff to be able to track. There's a lot of questions about like how closely are you following the thing that the other two of the other players are doing while you're not. It's not your turn. How much information do we want to put there, and how much of it? At what point does stuff start turning into noise? So we're still a good ways out on that, but we're steadily working on it and chipping away, and there's iteration on battlefield design happening on our end.
Yeah, it's funny because people have asked me like, what do I think about it, and I've said kind of what you've just noted there is you would have to change somewhat of the visual design because right now it's made for 2 players, and it would be impossible to put 4 players in that same amount of space. So there's a lot of people that are definitely going to be excited whenever that day comes, for sure.
Yes.
So now I kind of put the ball in your court a little bit here. Are there things about Arena or parts of the system or the UI that you think players underutilize that they should probably be using more than they are? And it could be anything from deck building or
A deck building one that comes to mind that every time I see a streamer use it, there's somebody in the chat who goes, "What? If you've got the horizontal deck builder, you can do like a search, like, T colon creature, and it'll split out your cards to creatures and non-creatures." I love that feature. I wish we had a better way of surfacing it because it's really, really helpful. Um, yeah, it's really nice. Fire up the horizontal deck builder and give that a shot. It's great for like limited.
yeah, one thing I've learned and I've had people comment on when watching the videos is being able to set the auto stack or not, right? When effects are going on. And they're like, "Wait, I could do that?" And it's like, "Yeah, you just click a button and, check a box and there you go."
Oh, a really big one. There's a lot of accessibility options that I think some people don't know about. There's the ability to fix the font size on cards so that those, we like to put a lot of words on cards sometimes. And if vision is a challenge for some people, you can lock that to a higher minimum size, and it adds a scroll bar, which is not ideal. It makes it harder to just see things at a glance. But I mean, if it makes the difference between being able to read the card and not, that's a huge gap. You can also right click on cards and hit view simplified. So if this is one of those, if this is a showcase style frame where the card text is right on top of the art and that's hard on your eyes, there's always a way to pull up a clearer view.
Yeah, those are both really good. I don't think people really think about accessibility enough in gaming of all types. So that's actually really cool that that's something y'all thought about to have in there.
Yes, I would love to get even more stuff in that vein.
All right, well, you have been nice enough to answer all of these questions for us. So I just want to ask you kind of in closing here, is there anything you want to share with the players about Arena or any words you want to have for the players to kind of just give you your time to speak to the players here?
I think a really nice thing to know, it's one of the things that I kind of brag about when we're interviewing prospective hires. Uh, of everywhere that I've ever worked, at every video game company I've been at, I have never worked anywhere where the people are playing their own game as much as I do at Wizards, both Arena and tabletop Magic. Like, it is a rare day that I do not see people in the cafeteria playing Commander or getting their sealed games in, uh, all that kind of stuff. Like, a lot of the people who are working here are as big a fan as you are. Uh, they're working here because they love this game, and it's really cool to see it in action.
Man, I have to say I can vouch for that, having formerly been at Wizards. There is a lot of Magic that gets played in that building.
And like some of it is playtesting, but a lot of it is just people playing Magic.
That is absolutely true. Well, let me say, Ian, I am super thankful that you did this. I know the community is going to be super excited to have you answer all these questions and put some of these rumors to rest and give us kind of a glimpse into the future. So maybe we can do this again in the future in another couple of years when there's more stuff to talk about, or I'll just come looking for the other Arena team members to ask them more questions. But either way, I want to say thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.